Okay, let's start doing our final tweaks. And I noticed something about the ship that I don't like. And of course we have to do that first because whatever we do to the ship, this will affect our rocks and our rocks will affect our grains. So let me show you what I mean. So the ship goes up and then I feel like it goes to the side a bit too much. So either it has to turn to its right and then take off, or we just let it pass us more in the middle, so more over here. Because when you look at the top view, you see it comes up and then it kind of crabs off to the side. And I don't really like that, so let's adjust this. Okay, so I played around a bit with our rotation settings on the ship, and I think this looks better now. So it goes up and it flies away almost right at the camera. So this is looking a bit more natural because it was kind of crabbing at first, but now it's just picking a direction and going. Let's take a look at our camera view. Yeah, that looks cool. Okay, so now let's redo our rock sim. So we go into the rock sim and let's go to the first frame. And of course, because we changed the direction of our ship, you know, the rotation a bit, it's gonna affect our rock simulation. So we have to recache this and stuff. But I also went ahead and I increased my P-scale minimum a bit. So the smallest rocks, so these ones here, they're gonna be a bit bigger. So I can show you this in the rock source. In the scatter settings in here, I increased my P-scale minimum a bit. And I also added some more variation to the scale distribution graph right here. So let's do a quick playbook of this. And then if we are 100% happy, we can continue with our grain sim. Okay, that's looking awesome. So I had to change a couple of things again because my simulation was a bit different this time. I had to offset the ship banking a bit, so it's a little bit earlier now, so it hits and then it banks out of the way a bit because of the weight. So I had to retime that a little bit, and well, that's about it, and I'm really happy with this now. So we have the big rock here rolling on the ground a couple times, which should be cool with the grains. And yeah, so I'm very happy with this. Let's cache this out. So we go to the render rocks, and here we have our new sim, our new rock sim. So let's cache this out, and we'll call this v2. So render rocks cache dot v2 dot v2 $f.bgo.sc. Okay, so let's cache this, and this is done really quick. Okay, so it's done already. Yeah. Let's check it with our ship for a second. Okay, that's exactly what we want. Awesome. Okay. Another thing I did was I deleted some more rocks. So in my blast node here, as you can see, it was a little bit too dense, and I know that the more stuff you have in your final render, it will take longer. So I just deleted some of the rocks on the dense places. Let's see if I can show you this. Okay, like this. So as you can see, I deleted some rocks where there are a lot of them. And I also deleted some rocks that you can't see, so they're kind of outside the camera view. Also keep in mind you delete any rocks that are still wiggling a lot, right around frame 100. This one is wiggling a little bit, but I want to use that one because it will collide with the ship, as you can see here. Okay, so then let's take a look at our VDBs again. So these are our VDBs. And then we eroded them a little bit. And let's see a comparison view in here. So we just want them to be the same size as they were before we turned them into VDBs. So like this. And we're on voxel size 0.03. Okay, so here's the thing I am going to change. Because when we're gonna put our grains over these rocks, we aren't going to see the little rocks anymore because there will be grains all over them and it's just not gonna look as good. So what I'd like is I'd like to have the rocks poke out of the grains a bit. And if we delete the small rocks in here from the VDB, they're not gonna collide with the grains and that will make them stick out, which is gonna look better in my opinion. And by the way, they're not gonna have a huge impact on our grains anyway, since they're so small, so the collisions won't matter that much. So I'm going to do another blast node on these guys and delete some of these small rocks in here where the grains will be. So maybe let's just ghost our grains. Show the grain sim on frame 1, of course. Frame 1, grain sim. And let's hide a couple of stuff in here. So our ship, our rocks, and our ground plane. Okay. So now we'll be able to ghost the grains in here. And what I want to do, so press 2 on the numpad twice. Let's get the ship out of the way as well. Ship. So you see all these little rocks here that are inside our field of grains. I want to delete, a couple of them so that we'll see them sticking out of the grains in our grain sim. I'm gonna put a null in between here to divide this, and then I'll click my select tool, and I'll start selecting some of these, the smallest ones. Okay, so I've selected a couple of small ones here. I will press delete, and here we have a new blast node. So like so. So if we would go back to our view, let's get rid of those grains in the background, and let's see what we've done. Okay. So we deleted a couple of the small rocks from our VDB tree here. And that's looking fine now, so let's tidy this up. Okay, so now we're ready to cache these VDBs and then go back to our grain sim. So go to our Rock Collider VDB. We'll call this v2 as well. So Rock Collider VDB dot v2 dot $f.bgosc. So v2 1 to 275. Let's cache. Okay, that's finished and looking good. So let's flag our rocks out and let's go to our grain sim. Go to the first frame, grain sim. Let's get our display geometries back. And I'd like to change a couple things in here as well. Let's go to the Vellum solver, and I'd like to change the friction on the grains themselves. So on the friction, let's change the static threshold to 1.5. And let's also change the friction on our rock colliders. Let's do friction 2, and let's also eliminate the bounce. So when I was looking at our playbook last time, I thought the clumping was a bit too much. So we could we could change our attraction weight settings in here, but instead I want to go to the grain source and I want to play with our noise, the noise we made on our attraction weight. So attribute VAP. Let's make sure we can see what we're doing here. So like this. Let's go in. And I want to change the settings here a bit. So I want to lower our contrast. So let's do amplitude 8. And this, by the way, this wasn't updated yet, so that's why it is looking black and white now and not before. So amplitude 8. I want to change the roughness to 0.7 and add some more turbulence. And I also want it to fit between minus 0.5 and 0.5 instead. Okay. Do I want to change anything else? Let's take a look with our ship. There it is. Okay, so we have some nice variety in here, so that's cool. We can maybe offset it a bit because I want the nose to be in dry sand. Okay. So we changed the contrast a bit in our settings here, so we should have some less extreme clumping next time. Oh, another thing I noticed is when our grains are falling and settling on the rocks, the big rocks are covered in sand and I don't really want that. So we did that by moving the sand up at the start. So we did 0.6 to make it clear the rocks, because when the sand was in the rocks we had these weird explosions and stuff. But there's a way in our vellum solver to get rid of these weird explosions, and I will show you that later. So now let's lower our grain layer. And also let's take a look with our rocks as well. So render grains, first frame. No, not render grains, grain sim I mean. So let's take a look. Highlight this, grain source. And what I want to do is I want to lower the grains as much as possible so that they will clear the big rocks, so there's not a pile of sand on top of the rocks. So let's see if we can do 0.1. As you can see, we can see the rocks now. But what we don't want is the rocks to be, you know, beneath our ground plane, because then they will just fall down forever. So when I do 0, you can already see grains poking through. So we're not going to do 0. Can we do 0.05 though? Maybe we can do 0.05. Let's quickly take a look. So you just go to our grain sim, and then we just load the first couple of frames. Okay, so no, we don't have any grains falling through, so we can get away with our 0.05. Okay, so that's cool. So what will happen now is the grains will start falling from here, and then this way we won't have a pile of sand on top of our rocks here. The only problem we do have now is our explosions. So let's turn off this, set our flag on the out here, and let's go to the grain sim. And what happens is we have these explosions. Now there is a way to get rid of these, and that's in our vellum solver. When we go to advanced, and then we go to our motion, and inside here we have the option of max acceleration. So when particles, glitch out or explode, you can reduce the max acceleration here. But we can also say limit acceleration in velocity update. And if we do this, you can do this per frame or per substep, but I'm gonna do this per substep. And if we load the first couple frames now, we'll see that our explosions are gone. Okay, so as you can see now, we got rid of our explosions. So the limit acceleration in velocity update basically says cap the amount of velocity that any particle is allowed to change as a result of dynamics. So dynamics as in our collisions right here. One more thing I need to address is I made a big mistake last time when I set up the rock colliders, because here in our collision detection, this was set to use solver default, and this should be set to use volume collisions, because when it's using volume collisions, it's gonna be 5 to 10 times faster than when it's gonna use surface collisions. So I was wondering why it was so slow. So definitely put it on volume collisions. Okay, so before we cache this out, I want to do one more playbook with more grains. So we go to the grain source and we look at our points here, and we'll do something like 2 million. So let's see what setting comes close to that. Oh, let's go to the first frame, of course. I always forget to go to the first frame. Okay, so let's do 0.35. 0.34. Okay, so 0.034 will give us a little over 2 million points. So I think it's good to do our final playbook on a little over 2 million points. And then when we like what we see, we can do our final cache on a higher amount of points, maybe 9 or 10 million. So let's go to the grain sim and we'll do a playbook from let's do frame 1 to frame 275. Okay, here's our 2 million grain simulation. That's looking really nice. So let's walk through this. So we have our big rocks sticking out, and that's what we want. I am going to make our grain layer a bit less thick, so we can see more of these small rocks that we deleted from our VDB, so they will be sticking out. And the other ones that are, covered, you just see a little bump in the grains here. So it's cool that we have some of them poking out like this. So make it a bit less thick. And I also noticed that, the ship pushes these grains out. So I'm gonna lower our repulsion weight just a bit as well. But I really like the thickness, the clumpiness of the grains that we have now. So when we do the high particle count grain sim, so around 10 million, I will probably increase the attraction weight just a little bit to keep this good looking clumpiness. And yeah, I think we're on the right track. So let's do these couple of minor changes, and then we can do the high res sim.